Welcome back to Private Fame. This isn't a story about Ethan Hunt, not about motorcycle stunts, not about impossible missions. It's about the man who became a machine and what it cost. Tom Cruise is one of the last true movie stars, bigger than life, faster than time, and yet we've never seen him stop. No breakdowns, no silence, no off switch, just perfect posture, perfect smile, and endless motion. He's outrun aging, dodged scandal, and jumped from planes at 60. But when does performance become protection? And what happens when you stop running? If you're watching this, hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Tom Cruise wasn't just a movie star for over a decade. He was the movie star, born Thomas Cruise Mappa IV in Syracuse, New York in 1962. He didn't come from privilege or connection. His father was an abusive electronics engineer who vanished from Tom's life early. His mother worked multiple jobs to support four children, dyslexic, frequently uprooted, and undersized for his age. Tom was a quiet, struggling kid. But inside him burned a drive that had nothing to do with fame. It was about proving himself. His breakthrough came in the early 1980s with roles in Taps and The Outsiders, but it was 1983's Risky Business that launched him into orbit, sliding across the floor in his socks and underwear to old-time rock roll, became an instant pop culture moment. Then came Top Gun 1986, a cinematic missile that didn't just break box office records, it defined a generation. Cruise wasn't just acting, he was becoming the American ideal. Fast, handsome, fearless. From there, the hits kept coming. Rain Man, The Color of Money, Born on the 4th of July. He wasn't just good looking, he could act. He earned Oscar nominations. He controlled his image with surgical precision. He became the most bankable star in the world. By the 1990s, Tom Cruise was untouchable. A Few Good Men, Interview with the Vampire, Jerry Maguire, Eyes Wide Shut, Magnolia. He took risks, worked with auteurs, balanced blockbusters with prestige. When he launched Mission Impossible in 1996, it wasn't just another action movie, it was a franchise hand, crafted by Cruise himself. He wasn't just starring, he was producing, he was building a brand, he performed his own stunts, demanded perfection, pushed his body to the limit. The world watched, amazed. But while Cruise was climbing higher than any actor in modern cinema, a shadow was forming behind the scenes. His involvement in the Church of Scientology, which began in the late 1980s, became more public and more powerful. He credited it with curing his dyslexia. He became its golden boy. He brought in others, recruited Hollywood elites, and was said to have a direct line to church leader David Miscavige. To many, Scientology was a strange footnote in his biography, but in time it would become central. Then came the fall. It started subtly whispers of control issues, failed marriages, strange interviews. But in 2005, it all exploded. First came the infamous Oprah couch incident. Cruise, talking about his love for Katie Holmes, jumped on Oprah's couch like a man unhinged. Then came his tirade against psychiatry, calling it pseudoscience and publicly criticizing Brooke Shields for using antidepressants. These weren't small PR blips, they were shocks that shattered his image as the collected, charismatic A-lister. The public saw not Maverick or Jerry Maguire, they saw a man on the edge, consumed by a belief system that most couldn't comprehend. Suddenly, Cruise was no longer cool, he was strange. Studios distanced themselves, projects stalled, his relationship with Paramount crumbled, the media swarmed. Katie Holmes, the woman he once proclaimed undying love for, would later flee the marriage with their daughter Suri, reportedly planning the escape in secret, with help from Scientology watchers. She filed for divorce in 2012 and took full custody. To this day, rumors swirl that Cruise is estranged from Suri due to the church's policies on suppressive persons, those who leave or oppose Scientology. Meanwhile, Cruise doubled down. He vanished further into the church, appearing at galas with Miscavige, living in heavily guarded compounds, giving speeches that were leaked and mocked. Journalists and former members described him as both victim and enforcer, protected, worship, but complicit. He became less accessible, less real. Interviews were tightly managed. His public persona shrank, replaced by tightly choreographed PR. And yet he rose again. The Mission, Impossible franchise saved him. His return in Ghost Protocol, 2011, followed by Rogue Nation and Fallout, showed a performer who was still willing to risk death for authenticity. Climbing the Burj Khalifa, hanging off planes, halo jumps, motorcycle chases without a helmet, no green screen, no body double, just Tom Cruise actually doing it. The audience came back, not for his beliefs. Still, Cruise remained a mystery. He doesn't party, doesn't speak out politically. He lives in controlled spaces, surrounded by layers of Scientology protection. He never publicly speaks about the church anymore, not since the media turned hostile. But those close to him say it still defines him, it owns him. The church promotes him as a spiritual warrior, the highest level of enlightenment. He is not just a member, he is the face of the movement. And that is the paradox of Tom Cruise. He is one of the last true movie stars in an era where actors are replaced by IP. He is a man who performs the impossible but reveals almost nothing. He is a global icon but personally invisible. He is worshipped for his dedication to cinema and feared for his connection to one of the most secretive organizations on earth. Tom Cruise rose higher than any actor of his generation. He fell into controversy so deep it nearly ended his career. And he clawed his way back, not by apologizing, not by changing, but by going even harder, even higher, even deeper into the myth of himself. He may never truly fall, but the man behind the mask, we may never truly see him. To understand what Tom Cruise has become, we need to understand what Hollywood turned into. In the post-streaming era, actors became interchangeable. Superheroes replaced stars. Charisma was replaced by IP. Actors could be deep-faked, recast, replaced. The machinery didn't need personalities anymore. But Cruise resisted extinction by becoming an event. When you go to a Tom Cruise movie, you're not just seeing a character. You're seeing a man defy gravity, aging, and death itself. No one watches Mission Impossible because of the plot. They watch to see what Tom Cruise is willing to do for real. That's the deal he's made with the world. I won't let you in, but I'll jump off this cliff. And we've accepted it. We've stopped asking questions about his personal life because the spectacle is just too good. But behind the precision stunts and perfectly tailored suits is a man entirely managed, possibly trapped inside a machine of his own making. He controls everything. His interviews are prearranged, pre-vetted, never spontaneous. His co-stars rarely speak candidly about him. Journalists are carefully screened. Red carpets are militarized with PR. What we see is a projection, a curated myth. He's like a living trailer, all surface, no backstage. The real Tom Cruise hasn't spoken unscripted in 2 decades, and that's intentional. Because the moment you see the man behind the myth, the illusion fractures. And still there are cracks. Filmmakers who've worked with him like Stanley Kubrick on Eyes Wide Shut describe the shoot as emotionally exhausting, even damaging. The production lasted nearly 2 years. Cruise was locked in, intense, meticulous to the edge of obsession. That film revealed a strange, cold side of him on screen, not the charming maverick, but a man deeply confused, emotionally distant, walking through a slow-motion dream of control and paranoia. Many critics said, this isn't a performance, this is a confession, and he never made a movie like that again. His relationship with power is central to who he is now. The Church of Scientology doesn't just shelter him, it elevates him. Former high-ranking Scientologists have said Cruise is treated like a deity inside, his every need met. Private staff, private chefs, gifts, loyalty. And in return, he lends the church its most powerful image, a golden, immortal face. He never criticizes it. He never questions it. He's the jewel in their crown. But that devotion comes at a cost. His personal relationships are brittle, brief, and carefully kept at a distance from public scrutiny. Nicole Kidman vanished from the narrative after their divorce, her name almost never mentioned by Cruise again. Katie Holmes, gone under a cloud of fear and legal silence. His adopted children with Kidman reportedly stayed within the church, while she became an outsider. His biological daughter, Suri, hasn't been seen with him publicly in over a decade. He has never addressed it, never explained, never acknowledged the rumors that Scientology policy forbids contact with suppressive persons, even if they are family. And this silence, this vacuum, has become part of his myth. No denials, no confirmations, just nothing, a blank space, a disappearing act. And yet he thrives. He's aging in reverse. He's fronting billion-dollar franchises. He's piloting fighter jets and jumping motorcycles off mountains. He's outlasting everyone. While other stars shrink or retreat, Tom Cruise continues to expand not in vulnerability or honesty, but in scale. Every film must be bigger, every stunt more dangerous, every second of screen time more heroic, because that's how he survives, not by being human, but by being a god in motion. And maybe that's the real legacy of Tom Cruise. Not his awards, which are surprisingly few, not his interviews, which say almost nothing, not even his performances, which often blur into each other, but his image, untouchable, uncracked, undying. He didn't just avoid cancellation, he built a fortress of control around his entire existence. He replaced transparency with velocity. He turned mystery into currency. And we paid for it with admiration, tickets, silence. So, when the story of Hollywood is written one day, when the age of celebrity ends, Tom Cruise won't be remembered as just a movie star. He will be remembered as the last icon, a man who never let the audience behind the curtain. Because for Tom Cruise, falling isn't about failure. Falling means being seen, and that's the one thing he never allowed. Let's imagine a world after Tom Cruise. The studio lights are off. The last mission. Impossible has been filmed. The body, once a machine of discipline and pain tolerance, has finally slowed. The face, long frozen in mythic youth, begins to age. The silence deepens. And for the first time, the myth has no protector. What happens then? Biographers will come, former collaborators will speak, whispers will rise into books, documentaries, think pieces. Some will praise him as the lost cinematic samurai, a man so committed to his craft, he risked death to make movies real again. Others will dig deeper, into the fortress of Scientology, into the people who disappeared from his life, into the control mechanisms that surrounded him like a second skin. Because Cruise's legacy won't be a straight line. It will be a war between image and reality. Some will call him the final product of the old Hollywood system, a man so dedicated to myth, he became one. Others will say he was a victim of his own construction, a human being who replaced vulnerability with velocity, connection with precision, and family with philosophy. And the truth, like all enduring legacies, will live somewhere in between. Academics will debate him. Was Cruise great, or was he simply consistent? Was he a genius, or a technician with inhuman focus? They'll say he never took the truly raw roles, that he avoided messy realism, that his best acting was always in films where he played someone pretending to be strong. Think Magnolia, Eyes Wide Shut, Collateral, Born on the 4th of July films where the Cruise mask slips, where the cracks show, and yet he spent most of his career running from those cracks, terrified of what they might reveal. Culturally, Cruise will become a symbol of control in an era that demanded authenticity. While younger actors overshared and collapsed under the weight of fame, Cruise withdrew. He never revealed his politics, never engaged in cultural discourse, never deviated from the plan. He was disciplined to the edge of detachment. And that detachment is what will haunt his story most. Where were the messes, the breakdowns, the interviews where he admitted confusion, failure, fear? They don't exist. They were buried, smoothed out, erased, because Cruise didn't want to be understood. He wanted to be believed. He didn't want intimacy. He wanted immortality. And that's why he will endure, not because he gave the world his truth, but because he withheld it so completely. We'll spend decades trying to find it. Let's begin with Keanu Reeves. Both are enduring. Both are action icons. Both survive decades in an industry that devours its stars. But where Cruise is control, Keanu is openness. Cruise choreographs every frame. Keanu embraces chaos. Cruise constructs myth. Keanu dismantles it. While Cruise jumps off cliffs to prove his immortality, Keanu walks to work with a plastic bag and gives away most of his paycheck. One resists being human, the other leans into it. Audiences love both, but for opposite reasons. Keanu makes us feel less alone. Cruise makes us believe in something larger than life. One says, "You're okay as you are." The other says, "Become more, be perfect, outrun death." Then there's Leonardo DiCaprio, critically adored, politically active, willing to age on screen. Leo takes roles that strip him down, that force vulnerability, the shattered mental states in The Revenant, Shutter Island, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. DiCaprio lets himself be broken. Cruise, even at his most emotional, never fully shatters. He cracks maybe, but never breaks. He can scream, bleed, beg, but the frame always preserves his dignity, his control. That's what separates Cruise. The refusal to collapse in front of us. Even in films where the character is weak, Cruise the star is untouched. He gives everything except surrender. And in an age of confessional celebrity, where oversharing is monetized and pain is content, Cruise is an outlier, a ghost. He never tweets, never goes live, never shows a sliver of spontaneous reality. He is the last cinematic fortress in a world of collapsing boundaries. And that's why the world clings to him even as it grows uneasy. Because Cruise represents something we're both nostalgic for and afraid of: perfection without explanation. A figure who exists not to reflect us, but to remind us what we are not. He is the final soldier of the old guard, the pre-digital, pre-fragmented, pre-selfie version of celebrity. The star who exists not beside you on Instagram, but on a massive screen, running, sweating, leaping from a helicopter at 20 feet, soundtracked by an orchestra lit like a god, edited to a razor's edge. And maybe that's why he still matters. Because in a culture drowning in access, Cruise remains inaccessible. In a culture addicted to authenticity, he remains scripted. In a culture built on empathy, he remains unknowable. He is the perfect contradiction. Still standing, still sprinting, still undecoded. And when this era ends, when fame burns out, when algorithms replace actors, when even the concept of celebrity feels outdated, Tom Cruise will remain. Not because he adapted, but because he refused to. He stayed loyal to the myth. And in doing so, he became one. One day, a statue may be raised in front of a movie theater, tall, lean, arms crossed, wearing the trademark grin. Children will walk by and ask who he was. And the plaque will read, "Tom Cruise, actor, producer, icon, the man who never fell." But those who watch closely will know. He fell, just not in public, not where the cameras could see. He fell in silence, alone, somewhere deep inside the machine he built to protect himself. And maybe, just maybe, that's the price he paid to become legend. Imagine a man who's been running his entire life. Not just in movies, though. Yes, he's always running in those too, but in his soul, running from the ordinary, from weakness, from stillness. His childhood was chaotic. A violent father, financial struggle, constant moving. He was a small kid, dyslexic, picked on. But even then, he had this will, not just to survive, but to prove something to himself, to the world, to the universe. And he did. Tom Cruise didn't just make it, he dominated. For a time, he was the single most powerful man in Hollywood, the biggest star, the surest bet. Every studio wanted him. Every director respected him. Every audience loved him. He made blockbusters. He made art films. He got Oscar nominations. He owned the box office. He was fast, charming, professional to the core. And unlike other actors, he never self-destructed. No addictions, no rehab, no scandals, at least not the usual ones. But here's the twist. The more successful he became, the more mysterious he got. Because Tom Cruise didn't evolve like most stars. He tightened, controlled, withdrawn. Everything became polished, calculated, sealed. He gave everything to the screen, but almost nothing to the public. No politics, no breakdowns, no personal truth. Just motion, perfection, smiles, stunts. And then came Scientology. That's when people started to look at him differently, not just as an actor, but as something else, a believer, a representative of something secretive, powerful, and deeply controversial. He never backed down from it, never explained, never apologized, just stood tall, confident, unwavering. It made some admire him more, it made others afraid. Because suddenly, the man behind the mask started to feel less like a person and more like a machine. But still, we watched. Why? Because in a world of noise, he delivers every time. He jumps off planes, he dangles from cliffs, he flies real jets, he breaks bones for the shot, he sacrifices not just to entertain us, but because it's the only way he knows how to exist. And you start to wonder, is this man brave? Or is he running from something so deep he can only outrun it at 200 miles per hour? That's the mystery of Tom Cruise. He never stops moving. He never lets you in. He never lets himself break. But behind the sunglasses, the $1 million smile, and the death-defying stunts, I think there's still that little kid, dyslexic, scared, alone trying to prove he's enough. And maybe he's still not sure. There's something almost tragic about it when you really think about it, this man, now over 60, still launching himself off cliffs, still sprinting full speed, still hanging from airplanes at altitudes that would kill most of us. And for what? He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the fame. He already has both. He doesn't even seem to do it for the audience anymore. He does it, it seems, to stay ahead of something that's chasing him. Maybe age, maybe fear, maybe himself. Because Tom Cruise does not age like other men. He doesn't soften. He doesn't grow more vulnerable with time. He doesn't slow down and reflect. He gets sharper, faster, more intense. Every film becomes bigger, every stunt more death-defying. There's a desperation to his precision, as if slowing down would mean slipping out of the myth, and once that happens, who is he then? He's never let us find out. Look at other stars from his generation. They play aging men, broken men, shadows of their former selves. Cruise refuses. He plays heroes, immortals, men who never lose, never cry, never doubt. He fights like youth is a contract he refuses to void. And yet, behind the muscles, the grins, and the sunglasses, there's a silence, a loneliness maybe. You feel it when he smiles just a little too tightly. You sense it when he speaks with perfect polish, but no intimacy. The man has spent his life becoming larger than life, and in doing so, he's vanished inside the image. His personal life is a ghost story. He hasn't been photographed with his daughter Suri in over a decade. His romantic relationships are brief, mysterious, and often followed by rumors, always protected by walls of legal silence and corporate choreography. He doesn't do vulnerable interviews, doesn't appear at small events, doesn't show up unplanned. Everything is measured, everything is mission ready. And maybe that's why we keep watching him, because in a world obsessed with confession, chaos, and relatability, Tom Cruise remains mythical, untouchable. He is not like us. He doesn't want to be. He's a mirror held up to our desire for perfection, our fear of failure, our obsession with eternal youth, and our denial of mortality. Tom Cruise doesn't just play characters who cheat death. He embodies the refusal to die. And that right there is what makes him unforgettable. Not his films, though many are great, not his awards, though he has them, but his defiance, his refusal to collapse like everyone else, his ability to keep sprinting when the world expects him to finally slow down and show us the man beneath the legend. But maybe he won't. Maybe we'll never see Tom Cruise break. Maybe his legacy isn't about showing us the truth. Maybe his legacy is holding the line, keeping the myth alive long enough that we start to believe again in cinema, in heroes, in the impossible. Tom Cruise is no longer just a name in Hollywood. He's an institution, and like all institutions that survive long after their creators are gone, he's been built on ritual, repetition, and refusal. Ritual in how he approaches every role like a mission, training, pushing, sacrificing, executing. Repetition in how he returns again and again to the same kinds of characters, the lone warrior, the elite operative, the misunderstood savior. Refusal in how he never allows the audience to see behind the glass. He's shaped modern cinema more than most realize. Without Tom Cruise, there is no modern blockbuster as we know it. When others began to rely on CGI and green screens, Cruise leaned in, not with technology but with risk. He brought back the spectacle, the real danger, the visceral thrill. While actors acted, Cruise did. He brought a physical commitment to the screen that bordered on religious, jumping off planes, hanging from cliffs, crashing bikes, driving cars at 100 mph, not once, but take after take. That commitment didn't just revive franchises, it revived belief. In an era of fakes, filters, and fabricated fame, Tom Cruise made audiences believe again, not in stories, but in the possibility of greatness. He gave us the feeling that someone out there was still earning it, not faking it, not coasting. And we rewarded him with loyalty, with forgiveness, with silence. We stopped asking the hard questions about Scientology, about his family, about the people who disappeared around him, because the myth was just too clean, too satisfying, too valuable. And that's the final paradox of Tom Cruise. He is a man who sacrificed everything personal to become universally iconic. He gave up transparency, mess, softness, mistakes, all the things that make people real to become something impossible. And that kind of sacrifice leaves a cost that can't be calculated in box office numbers. So one day, not soon, but one day when the lights dim and the screen fades to black for the last time, we may finally ask, who was Tom Cruise? Was he ever in love? Was he ever afraid? Did he miss the daughter he left behind? Did he believe in the church that sheltered him? Did he ever stop running? We may never know, because Tom Cruise didn't leave behind answers. He left behind footage. He left behind motion. He left behind velocity. And maybe, just maybe, that's how he wanted to be. Remembered not as a man you could hold on to, but as a blur, a flash, a legend moving too fast to ever catch. And in a way, maybe that's what immortality really looks like. So listen, Tom Cruise didn't just become a movie star, he became the definition of one. But it didn't happen overnight. He started out like any hungry young actor in the 80s, trying to prove himself, taking small parts, working through the system. You know that movie Risky Business? That scene where he slides across the floor in his socks? That was the beginning. That's when people first noticed. It wasn't just that he was good looking, tons of guys were, but he had this energy, this focus, like he knew where he was going. Then came Top Gun. That's the one that changed everything. Overnight, he went from actor to icon. Every guy wanted to be him. Every girl had a poster of him. He played Maverick, and honestly, that name stuck with him for the rest of his career. He became the guy who was always slightly outside the rules, but too good to ignore. From there, it was hit after hit, The Color of Money, Rain Man, Born on the 4th of July. He wasn't just doing action, he was showing people he could act. Oscar nominations, critical respect. He wasn't just a pretty face, he had range. The 90s were his prime. A Few Good Men, Jerry Maguire, Mission, Impossible. And with Mission, he wasn't just acting, he was producing. He took full control of his image. Every move was strategic. Every role was calculated. He was unbreakable. The studios loved him. Directors trusted him. He showed up on time, no drama, delivered gold. But here's where things shifted. Around the early 2000s, people started to see behind the curtain a little. He got more public about his involvement with Scientology. It started raising eyebrows. Then in 2005, boom, Oprah's couch. You remember that? He jumped up screaming about how much he loved Katie Holmes. It was weird, like really weird. People laughed, and not in a good way. Then came the antidepressants rant. He went after Brooke Shields for using medication for postpartum depression, publicly, loudly. And people started thinking, wait, what's going on with this guy? It was the first time people saw Tom Cruise not as a charming movie star, but as someone maybe out of touch, maybe even dangerous. It was a PR disaster. Studios got nervous, audiences cooled off, the media tore him apart. That was his fall. Not because his movies stopped making money, but because his image cracked. That perfect, polished, impossible to hate guy, gone. Replaced with someone intense, erratic, and deeply tied to a controversial belief system. His marriage with Katie Holmes fell apart. She left fast and quiet with their daughter. No explanation. People started whispering about control, about Scientology, about power. And for a few years, Cruise kind of disappeared. Not literally, he was still making films, but the love was gone, the trust was gone. But here's the wild part. He came back, and not by changing, not by apologizing. He came back by going all in on what made him unique, doing the impossible. He leaned into mission, impossible, started doing crazier and crazier stunts, jumping off planes, hanging from helicopters, climbing skyscrapers. and audiences started showing up again because even if they didn't get his personal life, they respected that he gave 100% on screen. No faking, no CGI, just real danger, real commitment. And now he's become this rare survivor of old school stardom. He doesn't tweet, he doesn't post selfies, he doesn't try to be relatable. He just delivers movies that blow your mind. People might not love him the way they used to, but they respect him. And honestly, that's maybe even harder to earn. At first, Mission Impossible was just a cool spy movie based on the old TV show. The first one dropped in 1996, a tight, stylish thriller directed by Brian De Palma. It did well, but here's what most people missed. Tom Cruise owned the rights. He wasn't just starring, he was running the whole thing, producing, choosing the directors, shaping the vision. And with every new installment, the stakes went up, not just for the character Ethan Hunt, but for Tom himself. See, Cruise didn't just want to play a spy. He wanted to prove something not in the story, but in real life. Every movie became a platform for him to do something nobody else would even consider. Hanging off the side of a plane during takeoff, climbing the Burj Khalifa, free soloing a mountain face, performing a halo jump from 25 feet, crashing a motorcycle off a cliff. No stuntmen, no fakes. It was his way of saying, I'm still here. I'm still the best. I earn your attention. And the public, we watched. We came back. Because while every other action star was leaning on CGI and stunt doubles, Cruise was bleeding for the frame, and that mattered, especially in an era where everything started feeling fake. Mission Impossible became his identity. Every few years, he'd come back with a new chapter, a new impossibility to survive. And with each one, the audience wasn't just asking, will Ethan make it? We were asking, is Tom really going to survive this? It became personal. But here's the genius part. He tied his real-life risk to box office results. The more insane the stunt, the bigger the marketing hook. Cruise became the spectacle. He didn't need Marvel. He didn't need a cinematic universe. He was the universe. So by the time Fallout came out in 2018, arguably the best in the series, Tom Cruise wasn't just back. He was reborn. He had become the last real action star. The only one left who did it for real, who put skin in the game, literally. And then Top Gun, Maverick. That movie was supposed to be a nostalgia cash grab. Instead, it became a global phenomenon. Released in 2022, when people were still hesitant about going back to theaters, Cruise delivered a full-on blockbuster experience. No superheroes. No magic, just jets, grit, speed, and him flying real planes, of course. Theaters were packed. Critics were shocked. Younger generations discovered him. Older fans cried. And Tom? He stood there as always, composed, professional, intense, and smiling. The message was clear. I never left. You just forgot what this looked like. So if you're asking me about his career, here's what I'd say. He started as a star. He became a legend. He fell hard. Then he earned his way back. Not by opening up, not by playing the talk show game, not by being relatable, but by doing the most difficult thing a celebrity can do today, staying excellent without asking for your approval. So yeah, his career, a rocket, then a crash, then somehow a resurrection. Not many people come back from public humiliation like that, but Cruise, he just kept running, literally and metaphorically. He outran the backlash, outworked the doubt, and made himself undeniable all over again. Tom Cruise's career is one of the rarest in Hollywood history, not because of how high he flew, but because of how precisely he managed his climb. From the very beginning, he had this intensity that set him apart. He wasn't casual about acting. He didn't treat it like fame, he treated it like survival. That's what made him dangerous and respected. When most young actors in the 80s were partying, falling in and out of the tabloids, Cruise was already strategizing, already protecting the brand, already thinking 10 steps ahead. Risky business made him recognizable. Top Gun made him global, and what followed was not just a string of hits, but a decade of domination. He made movies that people still quote 30 years later, but behind all of that, he was building a reputation not as just a heartthrob or leading man, but as someone who was obsessively professional. Directors loved him because he showed up earlier than anyone and never slacked. Cruise respected him because he knew every detail of a set. He wasn't floating, he was in full control. But the thing is, all that control came at a price. Cruise never really let go, even in roles that demanded vulnerability. And when he did let go, like in Magnolia or even in moments of Born on the 4th of July, you could see that it was a controlled collapse. Like he was willing to bleed on screen, but only if he could choose the wound. And for a while, that worked. He had the looks, the speed, the seriousness. He had the right directors around him: Spielberg, Kubrick, Michael Mann, Paul Thomas Anderson, all the greats. They used Cruise not just as an actor, but as a symbol. He became the embodiment of ambition, of pressure, of the American ideal, melting under its own expectations. But even with all that, his image stayed mostly clean. Too clean, maybe. People began to wonder what was really going on behind that smile, because it never cracked, not publicly. And then it cracked. 2005 was the turning point, no doubt. The Oprah couch moment became a meme, but it wasn't funny in the long run, it was revealing. Suddenly the world saw that Cruise wasn't just intense, he was strange. Then came the interviews about psychiatry, the public defense of Scientology, the clash with mainstream culture. He wasn't just promoting movies anymore, he was pushing a worldview, and people didn't like what they saw. That's when the fall began. Not a fall in terms of box office, he still sold tickets, but a fall in trust. Studios started backing away, fans felt uneasy, the press shredded him, Katie Holmes married him and then left in silence. Suri became a mystery, and Tom said nothing. He didn't fight in public, he just tightened his circle and went back to work. And that's the part people underestimate: how he handled that fall. Most stars who get publicly humiliated disappear, spiral, or rebrand. Cruise did none of that. He just waited. He trained harder. He made better movies. He built Mission Impossible into his fortress. He climbed literal skyscrapers to prove he was still the real deal. And eventually people forgot the scandals. Or maybe they just stopped caring. Because the work was undeniable. You don't hang off the side of a plane if you're faking it. You don't break your ankle mid-stunt and keep filming if you're just phoning it in. That's what turned the tide. People didn't come back because they forgave him. They came back because they couldn't ignore what he was doing. And over time, that distance, that cold, untouchable mystique became part of his power. Other actors burned out, got political, got soft. Cruise just kept running. It became a symbol, running through airports, cities, rooftops. He runs in every movie, and it's not an accident. It's who he is, always in motion, never stopping long enough to be caught. And the crazy thing is, it worked. He survived the fall, not by changing who he was, but by doubling down on it. Top Gun, Maverick wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural reset. In a time when people were burned out on franchises, on fake stakes, on hollow blockbusters, Cruise dropped a film that was classic, real, full of heart, and built on sweat. And it reminded everyone that he's still the best at this, maybe the last of his kind.